For hardcore horror fans, films that actually deliver on solid stories and genuine scares are often at a premium. Since the genre has become so saturated with bad films, this was all the more reason why Smile became the breakout horror film of 2022 and was a smash hit. Once word got out about how disturbing and twisted it was, it was a film that exceeded expectations since it arrived amid a relatively quiet and underwhelming marketing campaign. The fact that it delivered on everything from a great story to an intriguing new horror villain, actually scary scenes, and a disturbing concept, Smile was without a doubt one of the most pleasant surprises out of the genre in a long time. Here's a look back at the top 10 scariest and most disturbing moments from the film. Number 10. Meeting the only survivor. Smile's main character is an overworked therapist named Dr. Rose Cotter, played by Saucy Bacon. After a chilling encounter, Rose is sent on a harrowing journey to figure out the truth behind a disturbing chain of people who claim to be haunted by some kind of demonic entity before killing themselves. Her strides in figuring out what's really going on lead her to a man who seems to be the only survivor in another chain. She visits the man in prison and, after meeting him on a ruse, reveals what's really happening. This changes the atmosphere immediately as the man becomes enraged and hysterical with fear since she's admitted to being a part of a new chain. His man's shrieks and desperate yells are chilling and far more effective than jump scares since they convey just how traumatized and afraid of the mysterious entity he is. Worse yet, when he explains how he survived his chain, it forces Rose to now contemplate committing an unspeakable act if she is to survive her ordeal too. Number 9. Hallucinations. By the time Rose leaves her encounter at the prison, she is fully consumed by her predicament and fears that the mysterious entity will eventually lead to her death if she doesn't find a way to escape the chain. What made Smile such an effective horror film was that it perfectly blended elements of proper supernatural scares with some brilliant psychologically disturbing elements. Rose is slowly driven to the point of madness and even begins having disturbing hallucinations. In one of them, she returns to the hospital where she works and ends up stabbing a patient to death when she's confronted by her boss, Dr. Desai. The scene is double-loaded with terror as he unexpectedly rips his own face off in a scary moment that gives us shocking insight into just how unhinged Rose's mind has become. Number 8. Reviewing the evidence. As Rose struggles to stay sane and find help, her only source of it comes from her ex-boyfriend, Joel, who happens to be a detective. When she asks for his help, he follows up on the events and is the first person to figure out that the people killing themselves all seem to be linked. Rose forces Joel to let her see the evidence from the previous suicides. The scene that follows keeps up the ruthless nature of the film as we see video footage and photos of the Smile monster's previous victims. Aside from the creepy smiles they exhibit, the manner in which they kill themselves makes for one deeply disturbing scene, since it now seems likely that Rose is doomed to suffer a similar fate. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe our channel and press the bell notification so that you don't miss any of our amazing videos. Number 7. All the Smiling. Smile was renowned for being a great all-around horror film. Part of its success was how it utilized elements of gore, supernatural scares, psychological horror, and jump scares to brilliant effect. As scary as the other elements were, however, there was an overarching sense of dread about the film as a whole that crept under the skin of viewers. Even after the story unravels and explains why the film's victims smiled, this only made the film even creepier, since smiling became an indication of when someone was under the influence of the entity. The brilliant performances helped make the film's Smile scenes more terrifying because of how creepy and disturbing the portrayals were as person after person contorted their faces into hideous smiles whenever the demon was in control. Number 6. The First Smile. If the film was brilliant at getting viewers to fear smiles, it was definitely a first smile scene that created the foreboding aura that sticks with you through the entire film. In the opening scene, we see Rose meet a hysterical patient who is referred to her for displaying what appears to be hallmarks of schizophrenic delusions. As unhinged as it sounded, the desperate young woman tried her best to explain that she is being haunted by some kind of entity. Her only description of it is that it shows up as a person that smiles, only this isn't an ordinary happy smile, but a twisted and horrifying one. The tension builds in the scene, and as the camera moves away for a second, before returning to the young woman, who now wears an awful smile on her face and seems to be in some sort of catatonic state. The moment is bone-chilling and sets the tone for the disturbing feel of the rest of the film from that point. Number 5. Final Battle. While most of the film revolved around brilliant psychological, horror and supernatural scares, this all culminates in a frightening final scene. Rose's pursuit of the entity that is terrorizing her leads to her abandoned family home. Once there, she comes face to face with the terrifying real form of the monster and has to fight it. The final sequence provides a fitting end to a film that consistently rattles the nerves from the beginning. In the end, the horrendous entity proves to be just as malicious and devious in its physical form. 2. Placing yourself in Rose's shoes, as she has to take on this horrifying thing, is an unnerving thought, and adds to the final battle's intensity, which is wrought with tension throughout. Number 4. First glimpse, as the tension builds up to the final scene. Nothing about the film adequately prepared viewers for the shocking moment when the smile monster is finally revealed in its true form. The size, look, and overall appearance of it is something that is as grotesque as it is terrifying. Its monstrous face and immense size make it one jarring sight that sends a shiver down the spine when it appears. The film itself by this point already cements itself as one of the best horror films in recent memory. Seeing the monster for the first time is both terrifying and thrilling, since it's likely going to become an iconic horror villain for a long time to come now that the film has been so successful. Number 3. Spooky telephone call. We learn along the way that the demonic entity can cause hallucinations and take on the form of other people. This makes for one of the most spine-tingling scenes of the movie, as a physical scare is perfectly deployed with psychological terror to devastating effect. In the scene, Rose is struggling with her own mental health once the entity locks onto her and begins haunting her too, when her own therapist visits her and tries to speak to her. It all seems comforting and reassuring that she's around. That is until the phone rings, and when Rose answers it, hears her therapist on the other end. The chilling realization that whoever or whatever is sitting in her lounge is not her therapist is punctuated perfectly when she turns to see the woman before her wearing the same horrific smile that marks the entity's presence. The moment is enough to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and was a great example of how to do psychological horror well. Number 2. Her sister's neck. What made Smile stand out as a great horror film was that it never sought to exclusively rely on theatrics for cheap scares. On the rare occasion when the film did use jump scares, they were done spectacularly. In one of the seminal scare scenes of the entire film, Rose leaves her sister's house an emotional wreck after trying to convince her that she's not going crazy. This has all been taking its toll already, and when Rose gets back into her car, for a second her sister appears to follow her and walks up to the window. We expect her to lean down and show her face so they can speak again. Instead, a jump scare that will frighten you out of your own skin takes place as Rose's sister's neck appears to elongate and drop with her head twisted into a horrendous angle. The scene is so sudden and horrifying in its execution that it makes for one of the best jump scares you're likely to ever see in any horror film ever. Number 1. The ending. Another trait that sets Smile apart and makes it one of the best horror films of modern times is how relentless and unforgiving it is. After everything that Rose is put through physically, emotionally, and psychologically, her final battle with the monster is somewhat confusing, since it seems to end only to start up again. She defeats it and makes it out of the burning house, however, in a twist that is as agonizing and frightening as it is brilliant. We see that all this was just another hallucination induced by the monster. The most terrifying moment comes when you realize that she never beat it or escaped and is still trapped in the house. As if all of this isn't cruel enough, in the end, we see that all Rose's efforts have come to nothing when she ends up with the same twisted smile that proves the monster has won and possessed her fully at last. There aren't many films out there with the guts to have such a subverted ending. But it works brilliantly since it means there's now more than enough scope for sequels. So, that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, do give it a thumbs up and share this video with your friends and family. Thank you.